Last month, the publishing world was engaged in much hand-wringing and soul-searching. The issue, the prospect of a mainstream literary house, St. Martin's Press, publishing controversial historian David Irving's biography of Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. The argument then was that St. Martin should not lend a respectable imprimatur to what was considered a Nazi revisionist tract. Now, Christopher Hitchens, writing in this month's Vanity Fair, says that St. Martin's was wrong. He joins us this evening from Washington to talk about his reasons. And with me in New York, Eric Breindel of the New York Post, who's also written a column on the same subject. Christopher, you said, quote, after an uproar in the media, St. Martin's Press canceled David Irving's biography, and they did the wrong thing. Why did they do the wrong thing?
Well, David Irving, who's a rather intriguing individual, is probably one of the 3 or 4 necessary historians of the Third Reich and of the Nazi period. His book, which is now freely available in England, he's published it himself, actually, has been reviewed there by Hugh Trevor Roper, by Norman Stone, by Donald Cameron Watt, by all the major historians of the period, with great gravity and respect, because Irving knows the documents, he knows German, he knows the subject, he's, as I risk repeating myself by saying, one of the leading contributors to the field. The fact is that he has what I later go on to describe as depraved opinions. I'm being partly ironic by saying that. He's what they call a revisionist about the fascist period. He's doubted certain things that some people take as read, and therefore he's thought of as someone who needs to be handled with very great care as a sort of toxic substance. What I'm really arguing in the piece is America is a sufficiently grown-up and mature and courageous culture to take the risk of admitting this historian to the canon of those who we can read and review and discuss for ourselves as well.
Let me hear from Eric. Yes, sir.
Christopher argues that David Irving is one of the 3 or 4 necessary historians of the Third Reich. So let's understand who we're talking about here. A popular historian, familiar with documents, who's unearthed new documents every time he's done a research project, who contends, among other things, that the notion of a coherent scheme to annihilate European Jewry is a myth, that Hitler didn't know about the Holocaust, that Anne Frank's diary was a hoax, that there were no gas chambers at Auschwitz, that the Holocaust itself as a phenomenon, the decision to murder European Jewry en masse, is open to doubt. Christopher, in his article, makes something of a deal about the fact that Irving never said the Holocaust was a hoax. That's true. He said it was open to doubt. I wonder what you're saying when you say this is one of the necessary historians of the period. The fact that he unearths interesting documents?
Eric, if I may call you that, why can't we make this simple and easy? Simply say that what you and I have read should be available to any other American to read.
It should be available, and it will be available. The question is, does a publishing house have any kind of moral obligation to lend its imprimatur to a book that, in fact, the chairman of St. Martin's called effectively anti-Semitic? Why did he call it effectively anti-Semitic? Because he said in summary, and I think, though, it took a long time to get him to read the book and then to say this, I think Mr. McCormick was right when he said the essence of this book is that the Jews asked for it. You've read the book, apparently.
Yes, I have.
If you've read the book, you would probably agree with Mr. McCormick that that is a central theme of Irving's book. That, in fact, he says that the Zionist leader Chaim Weizmann, quote, goaded Joseph Goebbels. How did he goad him? He called for a boycott of German goods in 1939, by the way, 6 years after the Nazi seizure of power. This, in other words, is the book that St. Martin's should lend its moral authority to? I mean, there's no issue of censorship. The Institute for Historical Review can publish David Irving. Barricade Books can publish David Irving. My question is why does Vanity Fair, which published your article, accept everything that comes in across the transom?
Look, I may be obtuse here. I didn't know that St. Martin's Press had any moral authority. I don't know of any particular publisher that does. I think the way that you do lose moral authority...
And I think they would like to... they have a reputation. I think they'd like to preserve it.
I'm at a slight disadvantage in that I can't see you, and I'm hearing you rather vaguely down the line, but I don't think I've interrupted you yet. Let me just state what seems to me to be obvious. Moral authority, I think, can be lost by a publisher who undertook to publish a book, read it, in this case, perhaps a dozen times, readied it for publication, submitted it for prizes and awards, put it out to its sales representatives, and appeared to cave in for reasons that were certainly given to me by one of its senior executives as merely a matter of prudence. They didn't want to stand up to the sort of row they thought they might get for printing it. Now, I think that does involve a loss of moral authority.
So you can see that publishing houses have moral authority, and if they have moral authority,
their authority comes from
as you said, you didn't. Let's not interrupt each other since you spoke.
All right, and I'm not even going to get into it, but if I have to, I will. But let me, if you finish, Christopher, and I'll come back because I want to go back. And Christopher is at a disadvantage because he can't see us because we only have one-way video. Go ahead.
I can hear you properly now, though.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
Eric.
In a publishing house, I think you might concede, if it lends its imprimatur to a book, is extending a piece of its reputation to that book. That's why publishing houses reject some books and accept others. I would contend that in the Irving case, I have a different reading of it than you. I think the financial motive was dominant here. They paid a very small advance, and they paid a small advance for a reason, Christopher. The book wasn't able to secure a publisher in England. In the United States, it was rejected by most publishers. Why? Because, as the chairman of St. Martin's eventually said, it is effectively anti-Semitic. They decided to publish it. They sent it out to the History Book Club and immediately recouped their advance. A wise financial decision, a prudent decision, not in terms of what they were going to do to their reputation. No censorship issue, no civil liberties issue.
By the sound of it, not much of a moral issue either, from what you've just been saying.
Am I a moralist?
No, he said there was not much of a moral issue by...
From St. Martin's standpoint?
I'm now seriously confused as to whether you're saying that they were being financially prudent or morally in point of rectitude.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think this was a moral. I don't think this was a moral issue on either side.
I would like to take you up on what you began by saying, our restless search for common ground, Mr. Breindel. When you say that you think that, like everyone else, or rather like us, everyone else should be able to read it. But now you're saying only if they buy it, what, from some off-Broadway Nazi bookstore?
No, you say you've read it. Did you buy it from an off-Broadway Nazi bookstore?
No, I got it sent by the publisher, as I get most of my books.
You got it sent by the publisher?
Yeah, I'm in a privileged position as a regular book reviewer. I get most of my books for free.
By St. Martin's? Because St. Martin's sent out very few bound galleys.
No, I got it sent...
I thought you said it was sent from England.
I got it sent by David Irving.
Ah, the publisher, David Irving. Well, why doesn't David Irving then publish it here?
Well,
in the United States?
That's conceivably what
it will be available, so we have no problem.
Let me jump in, Christopher. Here's one thing I don't understand, and I want to make sure that I do understand it. If St. Martin's had rejected the book in the beginning, never having thought about marketing plans, never having agreed to do it, would you have quarreled with that decision if they said, we don't want to publish this book because we think your views are obscene?
No, I don't think one could have been able to quarrel with that in the same way as what did happen, which is that they accepted the book, they read it several times, they promoted it, all the reasons I gave you.
So your argument
and then they didn't even tell the author they weren't going to publish it. Okay. He heard that from the press.
So your debate is
and
about
I have it on the word of one of the senior executives there that they did this in order to avoid trouble in the marketplace and trouble from people in the press.
So people, agents who represent authors or authors who may still be publishing under with St. Martin's would, because of a decision, or if they had continued the publication of this book, that they may have lost favor with some authors, or they may have lost favor with some agents who might turn other potential authors their way.
Well, and I think they were afraid of a certain element in the press and in public opinion as well, probably, yes. But the point is it was a funk. It was
Charlie,
I quote one of their editors in my article as saying, if you want a title for your piece, why don't you call it Profiles in Prudence? Now, all of us on this show, and everyone in publishing, make their living basically by the idea of free expression and free trade in ideas and free exchange and everything that's under the rubric of the First Amendment. Yeah. I'm in favor of extending this, especially to people whose opinions may be repulsive or unpopular. That seems to me elementary.
It seems to me that what you are objecting to, Christopher, because you come along in this piece that's interesting and worth reading in Vanity Fair and say the problem here is that they caved in to protest and because they feared the consequences of continuing, not because they found it offensive to them in the beginning.
No, that's absolutely, yeah. What Eric said about that is completely wrong. I mean, they didn't suddenly find it was anti-Jewish or anything of the sort. They'd had the book for a long time. They'd reviewed it repeatedly. They'd sent it out to readers. They discussed it a lot.
So you're calling...
They panicked because of what they feared was going to be some sort of backlash, which I believe actually would not have occurred had it been printed. After all, the British reading public is not less sensitive on the matter.